Okay, good afternoon, everyone. Thanks so much for joining us. We are going to get started. My name is Angela Ambers Henderson, and I have the pleasure of serving as the Assistant Director of Admissions at the University of Houston Law Center. And I would like to welcome you to our panel this afternoon. You're in for a great treat. It is very rare that you would have in one place at one time all of these representatives from the various Texas schools. So I'm delighted that my colleagues can join us this afternoon. A little bit of housekeeping. We're going to ask that you leave your cameras off. This will allow you to be able to focus in on our panelists. They're listed there, their names of their institutions, and they have the lovely backgrounds listed as well. I am going to be off camera as I'm serving as sort of the facilitator or moderator of this event. Again, I'm from the University of Houston Law Center, but we're also joined by Dean Mensa, who will be answering your questions. Additionally, we have another individual from the University of Houston Law Center who will bring you greetings and information from a student perspective. We received a number of questions as you registered for the event. Some of the questions were similar in nature, had certain themes to them. We tried to group them, and we'll try to get to as many of your questions as possible. I've also put in the chat before you enter the room to make sure that you have your devices handy. So with that being said, I have a question that I'm going to present to the group. So I am going to go off camera now and share my screen. Patience. Alrighty, everybody should be able to see the screen. And if you can, I would ask you use your alternate device and go to menti.com. That's menti.com. Enter the code that you see there on your screen and just take a couple seconds and answer that question for me, please. I love it. LSAT mastery. Got a lot of mind reading there. Okay. Wow, optimism. Okay. I'll let a few more of you who want to answer that. Go ahead and answer. Slow time. Wow. Okay. Just a couple more seconds there. Communicate with animal. Oh. Great. All righty. Interesting. Love all the superpowers. Mine probably would be to fly. Yeah, and I see fly there a couple times. All righty. We're going to go to our next question. You know, that applying to law school can be overwhelming. We're here today to demystify that process for you. So let's go to our next question. Awesome. The best I've ever felt. God, I wish I could say that. That's great. It's Friday, so I feel like I'm hanging in. I get it. Okay. I am gonna take the poll down and thank you so much for participating in this poll. There'll be a few others as we go along today. But based upon this question, it kind of leads me to the first question that we're going to talk about. And so how are you feeling? One of the questions that we received was specifically related to feelings and mental health. And I'm going to read the question exactly as presented, and I hope that the person that submitted that question is here with us today to hear the response. And the question reads as follows: how do you do it? What was your mental health like before going to law school? How is your mental health now? I want to find a good therapist before going to law school so I don't fall into a negative statistic with law school. Did you ever feel like quitting, or not quitting, but maybe just stepping aside? That's a big question. And so I'm going to turn to my colleague, who is a recent graduate of the University of Houston Law Center, probably more recent graduate than any of us fellow panelists, 2019, to share her experience and attempt to tackle that very large question. I'll turn it over to you, Marisha.
Well, thank you so much, Angela. That was a wonderful introduction, but also the question itself, very loaded. I'm going to attempt to answer this honestly. So the first part is, how do you do it? How did I do it as a law student? I think first, you should know if you're admitted into law school, to some degree, you have been deemed capable and competent. So leaning into that comfort as far as knowing people have evaluated you to assume you can do it, you can do it. So be encouraged in that regard. Also, I'm a person of faith, so I leaned heavily into my faith during this time because the workload is a lot. But in addition to the workload, how to best tackle it, I would say when you start class or when the semester begins, make sure you've done the reading, do all of the reading you've been assigned. Also, there are a plethora of really great study aids available for you out there. Things like Critical Pass flashcards for law students that does a great job as far as breaking down the law into its basic black letter elements. And that's what you really need to know at the end of the day to master the law and how to apply it and to do well on exams. So Critical Pass flashcards, that's fantastic. As well as JD Advising. That's a really good website with good information about how to succeed academically. And then as far as just balancing, you'll figure it out. Keep your physical health in check, try to exercise, try to walk, eat well, drink your water, things of that nature. But that's how I would say how I did it. As far as how my mental health was before law school, it was totally fine. It was really good. I was excited. I came into law school with a vigor to change and help people, serve others. So prior to law school, my mental health was great. During law school, my mental health, it was also great, but I would say it was slightly tumultuous at times, simply because I found myself to a degree struggling my first year to academically perform how I've been used to performing in the past. So that was a bit of an adjustment. And coming into law school, I really had one idea as to what I could do with my law degree, which was to be a litigator. But I sit before you today, like working in the admissions office of the same institute I graduated from. So I had to be amenable to change and be flexible as far as keeping my mind open. So I would encourage you all to do that as well as you go forward with the application process. Keep in mind, yes, you might have a passion, but you can still achieve and strive for your passion in different avenues. And then also, did I feel like quitting? No. Even when it got to be really difficult, I didn't feel like quitting because the passion I had to serve was still there. So I would say in times where you feel weary or weak or uncertain, lean into your faith and hold on to your passion and your purpose and your interest for why you wanted to go to law school in the first place. So I hope this helps those of you out there, and especially the person who presented this question. So thank you, Angela, for passing the mic to me. I'll pass it back to you.
All righty. Thank you so much, Marisha, for sharing that. I appreciate that. And so at this point, I would like to have my panelists introduce themselves. If you can share your name, the law school you're from, your role at the law school, and how long you have been in this role. I'm going to start with South Texas College of Law. Oh, you gotta unmute yourself.
Yes, I'm awake.
Good morning or good afternoon.
Good morning, or yeah, thank you. Afternoon. My name is Alicia Kramer. I'm the Assistant Dean of Admissions at South Texas College of Law, Houston, here in downtown Houston. I have been with the law school. I celebrated 30 years in March. So yeah, I might be the longest serving person on this panel. Anyway, let's move on. What else? I'm sorry, my dean was calling as you were telling me.
No.
You want me to cover the other points that you listed on my email?
Nope, that's it for now. That's it.
Okay,
We'll come back to you. We're gonna.
I just sent my dean to my voicemail. I'm a little wigged out right now.
All right, thanks. I appreciate it. Texas Tech, you're up next.
Hello, everybody. Happy Friday. My name is Danielle Saavedra. I am the Assistant Dean of Admissions at Texas Tech School of Law in Lubbock, Texas. I did graduate from Texas Tech Law and started working there pretty shortly after, and I've been in admissions now for 6 years.
Awesome. Thank you. Thank you so much for joining us. Let's go to SMU.
My name is Heather Stovall. I am the Associate Director of Admissions at SMU Dedman School of Law, and I've been here going on 4 years now.
Welcome. St. Mary's.
Good morning. My name is Kathy Castellano. I'm the Assistant Dean of Admissions at St. Mary's in San Antonio. I've been admissions for almost 8 years, and I've been Assistant Dean for almost 2 years. Thank you.
Welcome. Texas A&M.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Terrence Cook, and I serve as the Assistant Dean for Admissions here at Texas A&M School of Law. I've been in this position currently with the law school for 8 years, but I have over 20 years of service in law school admissions.
And welcome to you. Thurgood Marshall.
Hello and good morning, everyone. My name is Andrenace Fields. I am the Assistant Director of Admissions here at Thurgood Marshall. I have been with the law school for 11 years, but I've only been with admissions for 2 years. So I'm a newbie.
Welcome, welcome. UNT Dallas.
Good morning, everybody. My name is Miguel Hernandez, and I'm Assistant Dean, Interim Assistant Dean of Admissions as of actually in my second month here. I've been in higher ed admissions for a little over 18 years.
And welcome to you. Baylor.
Good morning, everybody. I'm Jenny Branson. I'm the Assistant Dean of Admissions and Financial Aid here at Baylor Law School in Waco, Texas. I've been at Baylor for a little under 9 years, and then today is my 10-year anniversary in law school admissions.
Oh, my goodness. Well, happy anniversary to you. Yay. Alrighty. University of Houston Law Center.
Good morning. My name is Pilar Mensah. I am the Assistant Dean of Admissions here at the University of Houston Law Center, and I have been in admissions here for 10 years.
And welcome. And last but certainly not least, University of Texas.
Good morning, everyone. I am Dr. Samuel Riley. I am the Senior Director of Admissions Programs here at the University of Texas School of Law in Austin, Texas. I have been in admissions here at Texas Law for 16 years as of this past May. Glad to be here.
And again, welcome. Great. Well, I'm just going to pivot backwards just a bit. As a follow-up to our first question that was addressed by my colleague and recent graduate, Marisha, what initiatives does your individual schools take in regards to mental health, considering that law school is very stressful? And we're going to start that off with St. Mary's.
So I think one of the things that we have, well, we have a couple things, of course, but we do have a counselor, but we also have our campus minister, Sister Grace, who provides not only spiritual counseling, but sometimes whether it just be that she provides resources for anybody that's going through something. So, and then of course, I'm sure we all have the things on campus, which are events meant to just kind of boost mental health, even just the positives like bringing on the dogs and having popsicles and specific weeks that we focus on those mental health issues.
Awesome. Thank you. Heather, what about at SMU? What's going on there?
And so our law students have access to our counseling center on main campus. So we do have that as well. And then very similar to St. Mary's too, we've got different mentor groups that bring in like the anti-stress dogs, anything like that. And within our mentor groups, we also have mentors that focus on student health and mental well-being. So there are definitely a lot of different things that our law students can take advantage of to work on that while they're here.
Okay. What about at Thurgood Marshall? Anything more than what was already kind of mentioned, those types of programs?
No, sorry, nothing more. We're pretty much all on the same program.
Okay, just wanted to be certain. Is there any of our panelists that have anything additional to add as opposed to the other programs that were mentioned by the other panelists?
If I could add just something more broadly, perhaps, the Texas Lawyers Assistance Program is an organization that all of our law students have access to. You can Google that for information, but it's super helpful. I mean, they are an organization designed for specifically, well, I guess it's mental health, substance abuse, that sort of thing. So beyond what the individual schools might offer, there's invaluable resources available through what we call TLAP.
Awesome. And I think I see Texas Tech, you were going to mention some additional programs that might be available.
Yes, and the other schools probably also have these in some capacity. We recognize that sometimes mental health struggles are tied to financial hardships as well. So we do have a pot of money that students can request if they are experiencing financial hardships, and also a food pantry, because those types of things do contribute to struggles with mental health as well.
Awesome. We're going to go to the University of Texas. I saw your hand up. And I'm also going to ask you to grab that question in the chat. I can read it for you if you'd like me to, but you go ahead and share what you were going to share, but there's sort of a follow-up question there.
Absolutely. The University of Texas School of Law hired a psychologist. He's a PhD to help our students one-on-one. And so our students can go to our student affairs website and schedule an appointment to meet with her. We have other programs. A lot of us have mentoring programs as well. We created a mentoring program back in 2004 when we realized a lot of students were not used to being, they were from out of state, so they weren't used to being in the state of Texas. They weren't used to the culture at UT Austin. The largest got to them by the time finals came around. So our mentoring program was actually created to help relieve some of that stress as well. The question says, how do these programs assist in developing great resiliency? Is that the question? I think having someone to talk to is very important. I think one of the great barriers that students have coming into law school is the fear of being put into a silo. A lot of them feel like law school is the way it used to be back in the 70s and 60s and things like that, so they feel like they're alone. They're also afraid of that curve that they've heard so much about, that one exam that they have never had before. So they're used to taking multiple exams throughout, K through 12 and college, but they also understand that there's only one exam in college. So having someone to talk to, having other fellow students to talk to. So mentoring programs are great in solving that a lot. I think they get to meet a lot of people before they even step foot into class at orientation, and even before that, with our Facebook groups that we create. So forming relationships and study groups early on will help diminish a lot of the fear of I'm alone and I'm in this silo. I'm not, and those groups will help them feel like, no, we're in this together.
Awesome. Thank you so much for sharing that. And then University of Houston Law Center, you wanted to add?
I just wanted to add something that I thought was really a great part of the question. The person who asked the question stated that they wanted to make sure that they had support in place, a counselor in place. And I definitely think that's a very smart move. So, once you decide what law school you'll be attending, is to make sure you do have that support set up in that city, particularly, if you're moving somewhere else. So, and not just for mental health, although I know that's what we're focusing on, but physical health as well. It would be wonderful if you already have like a doctor in place. You already know where to go if you have an issue. whether that's physical or, you need to talk to somebody. Having that in place before there's a crisis, before there's an issue, I think is super helpful. Also too, if you aren't taking any sort of medication, making sure, you have that in place, you have refills in place, you're able to access that, because I know sometimes we've had students for whatever various reasons have issues with that, and getting off the medication and then getting back on is a whole process in itself that can be disrupting. So just having that in place, I think, is really important. I'm glad that student is already thinking about having that in place.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Dean Mensa. We're going to kind of flip gears a little bit. We got a lot of questions around GPA, LSATs, things of that nature. And so what I call the $1 million question, I'm going to ask the panelists to actually drop your answer into the chat. And so the first question is, what is your median GPA? You want to make sure everybody's is staying awake. At the same time, if you're finished with that, I'm going to ask the panelists to put in the chat your median LSAT score. The next question that I have for the panelists that center around numbers, if you will, it was raised by someone who is with us today, is the acceptance rate. Alrighty. And while you're still kind of putting that information in the chat, we're going to go back to sort of LSAT scores. And I have some very specific questions. I'm going to put the slide up, and then we'll go to our different panelists. But before we tackle any of these specific questions, let's talk about the range. So we got our medians in the chat. Hopefully all of the participants have been able to see that. I also have a very specific question as it relates to what is the range. Oops, sorry about that. The range. So can somebody share what your range is? Let's start with the University of Houston, the range of LSATs.
Sorry, I've got multiple things going on my screen. The LSAT score range is anywhere from 120 to 180.
Okay, and is that consistent with the range of those that have been accepted at the University of Houston Law Center?
So typically what schools will report, if you look on their websites, or if you go to the American Bar Association and you look at their 509 reports, they're going to let you know what the 25th percentile is, the median or 50th percentile, as well as the 75th percentile. So in terms of, are you asking about, in terms of LSAT for us, our 25th percentile overall for this last cycle was a 159, our median was the 161, and then the 75th percentile was a 163.
Awesome, thank you. Texas Tech, can you speak a little bit more in terms of the range question?
Sure. So similarly, our percentiles, the 25th percentile was 154 on the LSAT, median was 157, and then 75th percentile was a 158. As far as the range of scores accepted, we had everything from upper 140s into the high 170s of students that were accepted in that LSAT range.
Okay, thank you. University of Texas.
Our 25th percentile for our incoming class this fall of 417 students, 167. The 75th percentile was a 170. I don't have the low to high range for the of the admittance, but I can assume or make an educated guess that it was in the high 140s, way up to 180.
Okay, thank you so much. Texas A&M.
Thank you. The 25th percentile was a 156, median 163, 75th 165. The range of acceptability, we saw applicants 150, ranging all the way up to mid 170s.
Awesome, thank you. South Texas.
So the bottom quarter was a 152, top quarter was a 156. The high 140s were probably in the lower range all the way up to the like high 170s or mid 170s.
Okay, all right. St. Mary's.
So our 25th percentile was a 150, our 75th was 155, with our median being a 153, and then our range was anything from about mid 140 all the way up to about a 165.
Okay, SMU.
So I've got our 2020 numbers. Our 2021, we're still working on getting certified, so check back. But for 2020, our 25th was a 156, our 50th was a 162, and our 75th was a 164. And our range kind of sounds similar to several of my colleagues. So high 140s, low 150s into, you know, mid probably 170s.
Okay. And Baylor, what about you guys?
So for this most recent fall class, our 25th was a 161, median 162, 75th 164. In the building right now, we have people whose LSAT scores range from a 148 up to a 176. So very similar to my colleagues.
Awesome. UNT Dallas.
Thank you. Our median was a 151. Our 75th percentile was 155, 25th was 149. We are ranging somewhere in about the mid 140s to low 160s for our spaces for ranges.
Okay. And Thurgood Marshall. Thurgood Marshall.
I'm sorry, I'm here. I had to deal with an emergency.
Oh.
Our range is right now, our numbers as well for 21 are being certified, but we had a range of 145 to I think 162.
Okay, all righty, thank you. And I didn't forget anybody, did I? Okay, great. All right, let's go to these questions on the screen. Let's start with the first one. Does an LSAT score of 139 mean I won't ever be accepted at a law school? Would one of my panelists take that question? So everybody rush at one time. So therefore, I'm going to call on somebody. Baylor, let's have you answer that question.
So I don't want to say that you would never be accepted at a law school, but I think as you heard from our ranges, that is currently lower than our ranges, but you know, we are just a selection of some schools. I encourage you to look at lots of other law schools. The reason why I think you hear our ranges starting in the 140s is we really want to make sure that we're accepting people who are going to be able to be successful and who are going to be able to do the work. It's not because we're trying to keep people out. We are trying to make sure that you're going to be successful in law school. And you know, right or wrong, historically, LSAT and GPA have been the two best indicators of success in law school. They're not perfect, but they have been the best indicators. And so we all do use those as kind of the initial gatekeeping, just to make sure that we're letting you in to be successful. I would think about how you can study for the LSAT in a different way. If you can get that score up a little bit, I think it's going to give you a lot more options.
Great, thank you so much. I appreciate that. How about UNT Dallas? Take the next one. How do you treat multiple LSAT scores? Do you average the scores, etc.?
Good question. We look at the highest LSAT score. And that's it in a nutshell. So
okay. Yeah. I like it, straight and to the point. Mm-hmm. So I think that's the case for most of my colleagues here, but if I am misstating that for any institution, please jump in and correct me. Okay, all righty. How about University of Texas School of Law? What about that next question? If I think I can retake the LSAT, increase my grade by say 3 points, should I retake it?
I always ask applicants this question, but I'd shake out think and use the word no. If you know you score higher, then you should the LSAT exam if you're financially capable of doing that. Because we don't average, although there is a score band of a standard deviation of 3 points that we use, but we will consider the higher score. So if you score 161, for example, the first time, and you score a 164, that could put you in a different category for acceptance at different law schools and or scholarship purposes.
Okay, thank you. Does anybody else want to add to that? I think you kind of captured it, but the floor is open if someone would like to add anything to that. Alrighty, how about Texas A&M? Take the next one. Should I be disheartened if my LSAT score is many points below the average accepted score?
I like my response from my colleague at Baylor. There are 200 or so ABA accredited law schools, so that's a very broad question. If you have a specific law school in mind and your heart is set on going to school X and you're falling significantly below their average accepted scores, then that might be a little disheartening for you. But I think what we all would do is encourage you to expand your options a little bit, take a greater look at additional law schools. There are a lot of law schools out there that are willing to accept a broad range of scores. The people that I run into that tend to stress over not making a certain what they perceive to be a cut score are those that are probably most inflexible about the law schools that they're considering and willing to attend. So sometimes just expanding your net and consideration of law schools will provide you greater opportunities, not only for acceptance, but also for scholarship opportunities as well. We're all uniquely different in our approaches in regard to what factors we consider in terms of accepting students, how much weight we're placing on each of those factors, and in terms of the type of class that we're trying to shape. So think of it in terms of, here is my range. What are my options in a very broad way? And then tying back into the previous question in terms of retesting, maybe that's an avenue for you to get an even greater range of law schools for consideration, if that makes sense.
It does. It does. Thank you so much for that. And then the last question we see on this particular topic area, would you consider someone's LSAT score the first thing that law schools look at? SMU, what are your thoughts on that?
So for us, we do a very holistic review of your entire application, and I think many of my colleagues, I've heard them echo the same thing. So that means we're looking at everything. So it just kind of depends like what comes across for us and who different readers like to look at different things first. So do they look at the LSAT score specifically first? At least for SMU, I would say no.
Okay, all righty. Does anybody want to add to that? No? Okay. All righty. We're going to go to our sort of next big topic area. And that is money, right? All things money. Okay. And you'll see the variety of questions listed there. We are actually going to start with, let's start with St. Mary's, and maybe can you address the cost of living in your area? Particularly, we're actually going to have each of the panelists kind of go over this a little bit if we could, because we all live in geographically different areas. So let's start there. St. Mary's?
Well, I'm in San Antonio, so I don't know. I think it's relatively inexpensive to live here, but I mean, I've only lived here. I haven't lived in any other cities in Texas. So I do find that we have decent housing and plentiful housing around our medical center area for our law students. So in terms of cost of living, I do think it's reasonable here in San Antonio.
Okay, awesome. Let's go with South Texas.
So Houston is the fourth largest city in the country, but actually very economically situated, I think, for being a big city. So I think cost of living is fairly accessible for most people. We don't have graduate housing. We don't have housing, period. We are located downtown Houston, single, freestanding building, so there's no housing. I think I'd like to address, though, the ability to pay as a factor in acceptance, and absolutely not. For any of us, I think I can speak. I have no idea what your financial situation is. You are going to complete a FAFSA so that we can offer you aid of some sort, but I don't have access to that, and I don't want to have access to that, because what the admissions committee is looking at is whether we feel that you will be successful. And then we can address how we can assist you to pay for it after that. But we're not going to make that a part of the process at all. Many of us do offer application fee waivers. I think some of us don't even have application fees at all. We have a priority deadline, which gives you an automatic fee waiver, but then all you need to do is email and ask for a fee waiver if you can't make that particular priority deadline. And our scholarships at this point that we offer are based on LSAT and undergraduate GPA, and you're offered it or them automatically once you've been accepted.
Awesome. I'm going to switch to the University of Houston and ask you to comment as well, since we have 2 law schools right here in Houston. Is there anything that you wanted to add? You might want to talk about graduate housing. Go for it.
And we actually have 3 law schools in Houston. Don't forget about TSU.
Oh, that's right. That's right.
But yes, so since we are part of the main University of Houston campus, we do have housing. Any accepted law student would have access to any of the housing that we offer. But we do have housing right across, and actually it'll be right across this 1-lane street now. Will be the most common is our university lofts, is where our graduate students typically stay. And also, as a state institution, we do accept the GA Bill and any of the military benefits for tuition purposes. Like Dean Kramer said at South Texas, your ability to pay your finances are not something we look at whatsoever in terms of acceptance. We don't have an application fee right now. And when we're looking at scholarship opportunities, it is merit-based, the same way Dean Kramer said, in terms of GPA and undergraduate GPA and LSAT score, what we'll be looking at for those merit-based scholarships. In terms of waivers, we do have a CAS waiver, and we have a process that you can email us if you're requesting one of those that we ask you to complete for the CAS waiver.
Awesome. Thank you, Dean Mensah. Well, we're just going to stay right on in Houston. This is a different face than was on the beginning of this for Thurgood Marshall, but welcome, and just jump right in with these questions.
Hi, sorry for the quick switcheroo. We had a incident occur, but yes, no, we do offer, students can live on our on-campus housing if they choose to. However, we don't have like a designated graduate housing, so most of our students tend to live off campus. Which, there's a lot of options around campus to do that. We do not look at payment as a factor when looking at applications, just like many of the other schools listed here. We do provide application fee waivers. You can simply just email us at our lawadmissions@tsu.edu email address, and we're happy to provide you with an application fee waiver. And we do accept multiple versions of veteran benefits. So the GI Bill, 9/11 Bill, Hazelwood Act, all of that we do accept.
Awesome. TSU, I'm going to ask that you put that website in the chat that you just listed, where folks can request a fee waiver, and if the rest of my colleagues can do the same, and then we will go to Texas Tech to tackle these questions.
Sure, thank you. So the cost of living in Lubbock, Texas Tech University has it set at about $15,500 for the year. It's an incredibly affordable city to live in. As far as graduate housing, we do have some located right across the street from Texas Tech Law School. However, being in Lubbock, it is a smaller city compared to my colleagues on the call today. However, there's still about 300,000 folks that live here, so it's a very normal sized city. There is housing all over available for graduate students. Nothing is really more than 15 minutes from the school. As a public institution, we also accept all the military benefits. We do not take your ability to pay into consideration. We do not have an application fee that has been waived. Unfortunately, we are not able to offer CAS fee waivers at this point, and we do award merit-based scholarships based on primarily on your application. So there's not a separate application that needs to be submitted to be considered for scholarships.
Awesome, thank you. UNT Dallas?
Thank you. So the cost of living in downtown Dallas is much cheaper than California or New York. It is the average rent here starts at about $13,000 to $13.90 more or less for a 1-bedroom. 2 bedrooms will probably go into that $1,600 to $1,800 a month range. There is no graduate housing. We're standalone in the building. We do support GI Bill, Yellow Ribbon, Hazelwood Act, any number of veterans entities that provide that type of financial relief. Does ability to pay factor in acceptance? Absolutely not. We don't consider that at all. Does your school have an application fee? We don't have an application fee, so you're automatically waived. So that power to do things, my superpower is waiving application fees. If there is an application fee, okay, do you offer CAS waivers? Okay, so I just looked up on the LSAC website, and LSAC, and I put it in the chat. There's a link to free waivers for the LSAT and Credential Assembly Service, and I put that in the chat. So that's something to look at. And what is the basis of any application fee or fee waivers? Need or merit? That's a foregone conclusion. We know what that answer is. Thank you.
All righty, thank you. Texas A&M, anything to add that's different maybe about your institution?
I'm gonna quickly move through this. Cost of living, I think we project that at about $20,000. We are standalone in downtown Fort Worth. So that's important to know that we are not located in College Station. For our audience, we are in downtown Fort Worth, 16th, 17th largest city in the US. Of course, we accept all veteran benefits here, including Hazelwood for our Texas residents. Ability to pay, not a factor. I think we've heard that. Application fee, you will see it posted, but it is automatically waived once you go to check out of your LSAC account and submitting your application. We rely upon LSAC with regards to determining the CAS fee waivers. We can provide some support in regards to perhaps your law school report, but actually setting up your CAS account, we don't typically offer assistance there.
All righty, thank you. Baylor, I don't think I've heard from you on this issue.
Okay, well, we are in Waco, Texas, so cost of living is quite reasonable. Really, it kind of runs the gamut. We have things from $500 a month up to $1,200 a month. So it just kind of depends what works for you. And we provide a lot of lists and housing assistance. We don't have on-campus housing though. We do accept GI and all those benefits. We don't currently have Yellow Ribbon, but we use military service as a factor, pretty significant factor when awarding merit scholarships. Ability to pay, as my colleagues have said, has no factor. We don't have an application fee. We do offer a limited number of CAS report waivers, like my colleague at Texas A&M said, not the CAS service, and those are on a first come first served basis. And typically, they're only good for about a week. So you just email us when you're getting ready to apply, and if we have them, we can offer them.
Okay. Thank you. Let's see, University of Texas. Did I hear about Austin and the cost of living there?
It's you have not, but it is it's good. Don't pay attention to any of the articles and news stories. We're all in the same boat. But with that, Austin is considered slightly higher than the other major cities in Texas, probably only about 5%. I suggest you do your research on that. I think the median rent for a 2-bedroom in Austin, based on nerdwallet.com, is about $1,500 per month. But it's very still reasonable, as my colleague Miguel mentioned. Texas is very reasonable compared to the east and west coasts of this country, especially. So great resources and in Texas for law school. I would check out our cost of attendance on our website. We average similar to Texas A&M about $20,000 for books, room and board, living expenses, in addition to tuition and fees. We don't have specific graduate housing for our law students, but the University of Texas at Austin does have graduate housing for students. Most of our law students will live in apartments or condos or rent near the law school within walking distance. We accept GI Bill, Texas Hazelwood as well. University of Texas does not have the Yellow Ribbon program currently. And like our other colleagues, the ability to pay is not considered in when they're deciding to accept someone or not. We have a $70 application fee. I posted in the chat where you can apply for a fee waiver if you're not able to pay the $70 fee. We do not offer CAS fee waivers either.
Okay, alrighty. I know I'm forgetting somebody, kind of lost track. Who did not have an opportunity to weigh in on the money talk?
At SMU.
Alrighty, go ahead.
Which
Go
is
ahead.
all, I think most of these questions have already been answered though, because we are in Dallas. So I know cost of living has been addressed for Dallas area already. There is graduate housing, but again, similar to some of my other colleagues, it's not specific to the law school. Most of our students live in an apartment, not in the graduate housing. We do have the Yellow Ribbon program and other veterans programs. Again, no on the ability to pay factor into acceptance. We don't have an application fee. We do offer report CAS fee waivers, as some of my other colleagues do. And as they've mentioned, so I'll put an email address. We have a small form that you have to fill out to request one of those. And then our CAS fee waivers are merit-based too. So like I said, I'll put an email address in the chat that you can email if you'd like to get one of those forms.
Awesome. Okay. Alrighty. We're gonna move to the next area. And in fact, you know, we have some questions for you guys. So I'm gonna stop sharing this particular screen. And we want to know kind of the status of who our audience is, you know, what your plans are for the future. So if we go ahead and launch that poll. Okay, looks like a majority of folks participating today are planning to apply during this cycle. Couple more seconds, just in case a couple other people would like to answer.
It's holding
Alright.
pretty stuff. There's one, oh, two more. Oh,
Yeah,
no.
yeah, a couple more, yeah.
I was just gonna end it on, okay. 3, 2,
Two.
1, I'm ending it.
Okay, so the vast majority of people on this webinar will be applying this cycle. Next question. Okay. All right, looks like the majority of people have taken the LSAT already. Great. All righty. I think we can end that poll. Okay. In the interest of time, I'm going to move through some of these other questions pretty quickly, and I will be identifying one of my colleagues to take the question because I am pretty confident that the answer is pretty much the same for some of these areas. And then we'll save very institution-specific questions for a little bit later. So personal statements, right? I am going to start with Texas A&M to share what does a good personal statement look like? That was the question.
First of all, it is a writing sample. So consequently, it is well thought out. It is well constructed. It is grammatically correct. It is everything that you would come to expect of a writing sample. Secondly, it gives insight into who you are as an individual, perhaps what it is that is moving you toward law school and the practice of law. It provides additional information. What I like to tell students is think of this entire process, the application process, like a giant jigsaw puzzle. And we have all of these pieces, LSATs, GPAs, letters of recommendation, resumes, and then your personal statement is a piece to this puzzle. And when I put all of those pieces together, I'm going to see a picture. That picture is going to be a snapshot in time of who you are as an individual and how you're presenting yourself to an admissions committee. And hopefully it's going to tell me a lot about what it is that motivates you to be successful, and then give us confidence, as my colleagues have said, that you can be successful at our institution of study. We have an open topic here at Texas A&M, so we're not going to ask you to specifically address any type of topic, but you will want to be thinking about how you're enhancing your overall application and profile in writing that personal statement, regardless of what topic you're choosing.
Thank you so much for that. Speaking of open topics, closed topics, prompts, no prompts, at the University of Houston, we don't have a prompt, but I'm wondering if any of my colleagues, do you have a specific prompt or a choice of, pick one of these 3 prompts? If you do, let's hear from you on that. Anybody? Okay, not on this call. Alrighty. Next question, Baylor, I'm going to throw this one to you, and it's about letters of recommendations. What are the best letters of recommendations? Whom should they come from?
Well, stepping back a little bit, I think the first step is to see what schools require for letters of recommendation. Different schools have different numbers they require. We require 1, but we'll accept up to 3. I know some of my colleagues don't require them. Some require 2. So make sure you know that first. I think a general rule of thumb is that for those coming out of college or who have recently been in college, we're going to want that first one to be from somebody in an academic setting. So a professor, a teaching assistant, somebody who has seen you in the classroom, has seen you as a student. You want somebody who knows you, who knows you're not just a number. They can tell us more than your grade because we already know your grades, we have your transcripts. So we don't care so much about the person and maybe their prestige. We care more about what they can tell us about you and your ability to be in a classroom. Beyond that, if you've been out of school for a while, or you want a supplemental one, obviously an employer is great, or someone who's seen your work, who's seen you in an employment setting. We realize that sometimes is not possible if you're applying to law school and leaving your job and maybe not letting somebody know that. But employer would probably be the second one, or another professor. Beyond that, anybody that can speak to skills that are going to be relevant for law school. So an internship supervisor, or someone who's senior leadership in student organizations. There's a lot of different people that can write a good letter for us because we are a Christian institution. Sometimes we do like to see, or we can see one from a pastor or a priest, or somebody who knows you in a religious setting. Not necessary, but we see that sometimes. So there's a broad variety of people you can get those letters from. I think what's more important is the traits they can talk about, the skills they can talk about.
Thank you so much. There was a question in the chat, but I think my colleague addressed that. And the question was, if only 1 is required, but up to 3 can be submitted, is it better to only submit 1 or to submit 3 if they each can add something? So I believe that was already addressed. I'm going to ask the panelists to just put very quickly in the chat, how many letters of recommendation do your individual institutions require, so that students are aware of that very clearly. And again, the question is required. So I like the answer from UNT Dallas. Perfect. as being optional.
Hey, Angela, can I just add something while people are answering that question? And I want people to not feel concerned or worried if they don't know a lawyer.
Oh, yeah.
Or if
Yeah.
they don't know somebody important, my little air quotes. It's super, you should not be intimidated if you can't get a letter of recommendation from an attorney or a council person or whomever famous you think is. It's more, as my colleague at Baylor said, what it is they have to say, how helpful they are, informative they are, the information that they provide. In some instances, you may go to a giant school and you're more associated with the TA, and that's okay too, because that person can, tell us about you. If you've done a clerkship or something in somebody fabulous's office, you may not have encountered him or her at all. And their support staff in a more meaningful way. So just don't be worried if you don't think you know somebody, important.
I think that's a great point that you raise, and thank you for raising that. I tell students, potential applicants all the time, it's the relationship that you have with the person, a real relationship. We can all tell probably in the first sentence from that lawyer, that congressperson, that senator, that this person has no idea who you are, but perhaps they play golf with your dad. So you don't really want those kind of letters of recommendation. So great point. Thank you. Thank you so much for pointing that out. I am going to go to St. Mary's and ask, there are some very specific questions relating to the personal statement again, as it relates to, I'm going to say like an interview. So let me start there. First of all, do you require or allow interviews at St. Mary's?
At St. Mary's, we do not allow interviews or require them. We do encourage people to visit the campus if that's something that they feel is important, just to get a feel for the campus and for the environment. And I know a number of other law schools are in the same situation. We are happy to meet with you, but it's not any sort of interview process.
Okay. For those of my colleagues that have a very specific interview process, can you come off mute and speak to that?
At Texas Law, we have a platform from a company called Cura Talent, in which we offer an interview. An applicant cannot request to have an interview. It is only a selection process from the admissions committee. If you are seriously considering attending Texas Law and you receive an email from us asking you to do an interview, you should definitely consider doing that interview.
Okay.
At Baylor Law, we do have an interview program. They are optional, and it's up to you to sign up for them. The dates and times are listed on our website. They're virtual and in person on our campus and around the country. But we have a set list of questions we walk through. We keep those notes and add them to your application.
Okay, thank you. Anybody else as it relates to interviews? Okay. Alrighty, I have a series of questions relating to the lovely, what I call character and fitness, right? So let's see, we're gonna go to Texas Tech to just address character fitness generally, and then I'll raise the different questions to a couple of other colleagues.
Sure. So generally, character and fitness, I always say to err on the side of over disclosure. More often than not, it is the lack of disclosure that will get you in trouble. We understand that you all are either in college or have been young college students at some point in time and may have made some questionable choices during those times. And it's less likely that, you had alcohol in your dorm. That's less likely to keep you out of law school and less likely to get you in trouble versus you had alcohol in your dorm and then you made a choice not to disclose that to law schools and you made a choice to hide that and it comes out later and that becomes a whole integrity issue. So more often than not, it is the lack of disclosure that gets you in trouble. So even if your attorney or judge friend or your student conduct person at your school says you don't need to disclose, I would probably say go ahead and do that. Definitely read carefully the language in each school's application. However, oftentimes the schools do try to match the bar language. So again, the over disclosure is probably going to be the safest bet. which is the advice I give. But if any of my colleagues disagree, I am happy to turn that over to them.
Yeah, I think you're spot on. I'm responsible for character fitness in this office, and I couldn't have said it better. Absolutely. I got a follow-up question though. So the question specifically is, does a drug arrest disqualify you from being accepted into your program? Okay, we got head movement. We'll take that.
It depends, right? It depends on how severe and how you own up to it, or if you don't own up to it, or if you take responsibility for it. I think it depends on how you answer the question in the addendum. You will have to submit an addendum describing the circumstance. And that is where it is imperative that you do discuss sort of how you either overcame it, or if it's an issue, how you plan to overcome it, or if it was just a one-time thing, just indicating how that is not a reflection on you. And again, taking responsibility for it, not blaming others. I think in that is probably the best route to go.
Okay. So there's a follow-up question. I see a question in the chat. I'll come back to that in a second, but here's the second part of this question regarding different types of arrest. And I have all kind of things, alcohol, drugs. I won't bore the panel with all of that, but once accepted, what does it look like? Can I take the bar? Will I be able to practice? So we have someone with a conviction. I'm now accepted. I go through your law school and I sit and pass the bar. Will I be able to practice in Texas? Anybody want to tackle that one?
Sure, I'll take a shot at it and see if my colleagues agree with me. And I don't want this to be viewed as a cop-out, but applying to law school, going to law school, graduating from law school, and then being eligible to sit for the bar exam, they're all different things. And so I'm not sure any of us are in a position to tell you to assess any individual's unique situation in terms of eligibility to sit for the bar. Some of my students that have had some past indiscretions that they felt concerned about have reached out to the Board of Law Examiners and kind of asked for some type of preliminary evaluation or judgment as to in terms of their eligibility, and they have not met great success. So from my limited knowledge and the experience of some of my prior students, no one's really willing to comment and go on record guaranteeing eligibility to sit for a bar examination. They're going to wait for you to apply to sit for that bar. Then they're going to do their criminal background check, and then they're going to assess your character and fitness in that particular case and make judgment or in regards to your suitability at that particular point in time. I will say that time heals all wounds. If there's something there that you're not particularly proud of, if you did it yesterday, that's a lot different than it occurred 10 years ago. And so everything, again, with my colleague at St. Mary's, everything is, it depends, because each of you are uniquely situated and circumstances are different, and you're going to have different bodies assessing and making rulings on your particularly unique situation. And if I can say one more thing at risk of offending all by speaking too much, I think I saw something pop up about dismissed cases and charges and things of that nature, and whether you have expunged records or things of that nature. I've seen a lot of people think their records were expunged, and consequently, you do not have to report. That's probably the biggest offense that I've seen in terms of coming to my associate academic dean and having to amend your original law school application. If you do not have a court order in your hand that says these charges have been expunged, your record is clear, this is sealed, whatever that language might be, depending on your jurisdiction. If you don't have a court order in your hand signed by a judge that says it's the case, you had better disclose. As my colleague from Texas Tech said, you better over disclose and make sure, because that's the quickest way to get caught up, either with the Board of Law Examiners or and ultimately with your home institution, your law school, is thinking something was expunged. You did not have to report. And that mistake of belief is not a defense in most cases. So you have to be certain if you're omitting something because you think that record has been expunged. And there are differences between deferred adjudications and actual expungement of records. And so you've got to be crystal clear on that in terms of what your status is. Call us and ask. If you want to do that, I promise I will tell you the truth from my perspective, from the information you provide. It will not be held against you, because ultimately we have to get you on record, and it needs to be an accurate record, not only for consideration for law school, but also for the bar jurisdiction that you want to sit for. So part of that is making sure that true, accurate record comes into play.
Awesome. No, I think that was great information. You made me turn my camera on when you started talking about records expunged, not expunged, have a court order in your hand. I'll take my camera off now, but I had to. Yes, yes, yes. Very
I
important.
thought that was like the Grammys or something where you're talking too much in the background. music
No,
starts to
no,
play.
no, that was, yes, yes, preach, preach, preach. So that was awesome. All righty. So now I'll turn my camera off. So I'm looking at our time and I'm trying to get most of the questions in. I am going to say I see questions going in the chat. I'm not necessarily going to respond to those. That's because people who registered had an opportunity to submit questions prior. So I think it's important that we get to those questions before attempting to answer the questions in the chat. So I just want to be fair about that. I do want to spend the next few minutes on some very institution-specific questions that were received prior. So the first one is for University of Texas, and this question reads as follows. What is the type of person / lawyer that UT is trying to put out into the world?
The first word that comes to mind is professional. Has integrity, follows all of the rules that the University of Texas at Austin has. A leader, they take advantage of opportunity, but ultimately they take care of their clients and they respect their oath to the law school and to the profession.
Okay, all righty. For the University of Houston, the specific question is, what makes University of Houston law program better than those other programs in the state of Texas? Sorry, demons. Ouch.
She knows I love that question.
Yeah.
So the first thing I always say to a question like that is it's really important for you as a potential student, potential applicant to do your research. If you meet with schools, visit their websites, go to their events, you will be able to answer that question for yourself, because I think what you'll find is we are all at different institutions, but we are professionals and we are colleagues and we get along and we get to see each other all the time. So I would never say anything negative about another institution. I would just talk about the benefits and what I think are pros to attending University of Houston. One of those being, of course, the location. Houston, as we've said, is the 4th largest city in the country. It has a great legal market. So in terms of opportunities for you with internships, clerkships, employment after you graduate, Houston is a great place, and it's also just a fun, diverse city to live in while you're in law school. In terms of the law school itself, I think one of the great benefits is that we have a very broad course offering. So if you're not sure what kind of law you would like to practice, you're still deciding, or you do know, you will likely be able to find many courses in that area for you to kind of specialize in what you're interested in. I also think that we have a really great support system here. Hopefully you'll experience that as you go through the admissions office and the support you receive as an applicant. And then once you're here, our student services office, we have an academic advisor, you're supplied a career counselor, you have a faculty mentor, you have a student mentor, and then of course, all the professors are here and available to meet with during office hours for your classes. So trying to make sure that you are happy, successful, learning what it is that you came for. And upon graduation, we'll find that job, that career that you've really wanted. I have to put this plug in because I just have to. Also, I think what will be great about Houston is next year we have a brand new building, which we're super excited about. We'll have a state-of-the-art building that our fall 2022 entering class will be the first to experience.
Awesome, thank you. Now I'm going to ask sort of broad questions regarding programming. So which law schools in Texas have a special program for real estate law? Anybody? Okay,
We
maybe
don't have a
not.
special program, but I'm sure all of us offer real estate courses.
Right.
Real estate law courses, sorry.
Absolutely. Okay.
We do have a real estate track.
At Baylor, okay, great, thank you so much. All righty. Anybody else? Okay, another program of interest. I have a couple questions on this relates to, can you tell me about opportunities for environmental law at your school? Let's start with St. Mary's.
So we have, again, not a program, but we do have classes. We also have a couple of student organizations that work with alums and things like that in environmental, and then in sort of the oil and gas, water type areas as well.
Okay. Anybody else want to speak for a special program? And I got air quotes over here in environmental law.
Yes, I will. At Texas A&M, we definitely, that's one of our pillars of excellence in terms of environmental law and natural resources, things of that nature. And so what that means is you will see an opportunity to, beyond the basic coursework, actually receive a certificate or specialization within the environmental law area. We are currently launching an environment and natural resources related clinic. And then we're tying in some of the other experiential opportunities as well in terms of moot court, mock trial, advocacy type competitions. And so you're going to see an opportunity for those interested in environmental law. And there are probably 9 professors that we have on staff that specialize in that area, oil and gas, water law, the whole gamut. You're going to see a pretty comprehensive approach to training someone interested in environmental law and policy issues.
Okay. All righty. Thank you so much for that. I wasn't aware of that, actually. Good information. Anybody else?
I was just going to
Okay.
say University of Houston Law Center also has an environmental energy and natural resource center. I put the link to the website in the chat. We also offer an LLM in environmental law. So if a student is really interested, they can go on to earn their LLM in addition to just the JD.
Okay. Another part of the application that we did not talk about, and I will be remiss for not mentioning it, is the resume. So can I rely on Texas Tech to just speak to us generally about the resume? What are you looking for? What should it include? What's too much? What's not enough?
Sure. The first thing I would recommend, of course, for everything is read the application of the school that you're applying to. So each school may or may not have a page limit. At Texas Tech, we do not. Typically, we want to see things that have relevant skills. So if you don't have a legal internship to include in there, that's okay. I worked at a yogurt shop before I went to law school, and that was, some leadership skills, some ability to manage different kinds of tasks, right? So we're wanting to see different skills. There's no specific job that we're looking for or we'll put on a pedestal above anything else. I would recommend that if you are working while you are a student, to also include the hours that you've worked so that we can see, hey, you were working 40 hours a week while also being a full-time student and being able to keep your grades up. That's a big achievement. As far as things to possibly leave off, I would tell you to leave off things from high school. That's past. We're looking to see what you've been doing more in the present, and how those skills will help you continue to grow as a student and an academic in the future.
Awesome. Does any of my other colleagues want to add anything to the resume discussion? Okay. I have quite a few questions from what I'm going to call my mature prospective law students, right? And so I would like to raise a couple of those questions, if I may. Staying on the topic of the resume, if you have been out in the workforce for a number of years, do you have any recommendation on how long that resume should be? Any guidance on that? UNT Dallas, your thoughts?
I think if somebody is got, is replete with maybe a 4 or 5 page resume, I'd say be economical, and now you can afford to be a little more selective, and you don't have to call it down to just a single page or even a page and a half, but consider the things that are really important in your experience and how they relate to your law school experience. In that case, you have a little more flexibility, I think, but it really just depends on the individual. I mean, we've seen resumes that are 4 and 5 pages, and we're not going to knock anybody for putting an extensive resume or a CV on on their application, particularly individuals who have PhDs or advanced degrees in any number of advanced degrees. I think, it just depends on the individual, but on the average, it's about 2 pages worth of information, even with individuals who have a lot of experience.
Okay. Thurgood Marshall, can you speak to just any general advice for, I didn't say this, but this is what the question says, older students? I didn't say.
Yeah, so we do have a lot of, however you want to call it, older, mature, non-traditional students that attend our law school. Like my colleague said, please put your work experience on your resume. That gives us an insight of what you've done. Your resume really serves as a tool to let us know what you've experienced, what you've done, what you've been involved in. Have you been a leader? Do you have any leadership experience or skills? All of that information is really useful to get the full picture of who you are as an applicant. So we do not at our law school have a page limit, but I would advise being concise. Just hitting the highlights are important. So definitely, put your most significant accomplishments up first on your resume, so that way it's easier to read and flow. But for sure, hopefully that's helpful.
Awesome. Okay. One question that has come up, and I didn't raise it at the beginning, I probably should have, is regarding start times, right? Do you have a fall start? Do you have a spring start? So I'm just going to ask my colleagues to drop in the chat if you have both starts or one start. That will be helpful, I think, for the participants here. I would also ask that you just indicate whether or not you have a part-time program. You can place that information in the chat as well. While you guys are doing that, I'm gonna pull up the next question. Alrighty, this question relates to the competitiveness of law school in light of COVID. Question is, I've heard that COVID has made both last year and this year very competitive for law school applications and acceptance. Should a prospective student spend time researching and interacting with the admissions groups of schools on campus they are interested in? Will or will this not make a difference? Oh, that was a mouthful.
Can I ask a question? Do my colleagues feel that COVID is what made the application process more competitive? I don't know that I would blame that on COVID. I think that the number of people applying to law school increased. The number of people scoring significantly or scoring well, doing well on the LSAT increased. I don't know if that was directly impacted by COVID. I mean, people say we all had time to study more for the LSAT, and that might have impacted the improved scores. But I would agree that certainly the number of people applying and the scores certainly made it way more competitive. But maybe that's one thing I can't blame on COVID just by itself.
Yeah, I think COVID is a factor, but I think there were other factors in play as well. I agree.
All righty, that's fair. Here's time for us to ask another question. I'm very interested now that we're almost to the end of this session to get some feedback on what your plans are now that we're talking about increased competitiveness, COVID, more applications or not. So can we launch that next poll, Dean Mensa?
Oh, sorry.
That was your lead in. You didn't get to.
This is okay, gotcha. Boom.
Thank you. While that poll is going, I'm going to ask my colleagues to just drop in the chat your admission deadlines for both early decision and regular decision. Okay, got the majority of folks are applying this cycle, are applying to Texas schools. Makes sense, okay. And we'll just wait for a couple of seconds until my colleagues have had the opportunity to enter that information in the chat. Alrighty, we could probably end that poll.
So everyone is either yes or next fall. Only one person said no.
Okay, alrighty, awesome. Thank you. Thank you for that. This session was scheduled to last from 11 to 12:30. We have a number of questions that I still have not had the opportunity to ask my colleagues. I would ask my colleagues if they're interested in staying, going over a little over. If you have other commitments, I do understand that. But I would like to put a few more questions before the panel, if that's okay.
I have to drop off pretty soon after 12:30, so I apologize.
No, no worries. If you have to drop off, and we'll go through a couple more with the folks that can remain, if that's okay. Before you do that, though, I know you've put other information in the chat. Maybe put your website. If you want to share your contact information, go ahead and do that. I would ask everybody to do that. Your Law Center website, your contact information, if you want to share that. I didn't have a chance to raise the whole GRE LSAT. That's the next series of questions. So while you're doing that, typically the LSAT, right? That was the measure, the only way that we can apply. But now some of us are accepting the GRE. In the chat, can you indicate whether or not you accept the LSAT, the GRE, or both? And for those who accept the GRE and who have been doing this for a while, I guess, I have a specific question relating to the GRE and the type of GRE score that you're looking for, much similar to you provided information on like your LSAT median. Do you have any information to share relating to the median GRE? I'm gonna go to University of Texas because I think they've take the GRE and I think y'all have been doing it for a minute, as they would say on the street. So would you mind sharing?
Sure. We don't have official medians that we have or share with the public. It is competitive, just as the regular applicant pool is. But again, keep in mind that it is a holistic review of your entire application. So if you have quote unquote your GRE score is your objective criteria or subjective criteria, your personal statement and resume can increase your acceptability.
Okay. Anybody else taking the GRE? Can you speak to, I don't know, median or ideal scores or anything like that? Okay. Maybe no one wants to say, and that's fine, because if I were speaking for the University of Houston Law Center for Dean Pilar-Mensah, I would echo what was shared by the representative from the University of Texas. No data to share specifically, but competitive LSAT score, competitive GRE score, pretty much in the same vein. So thank you for that. Alrighty, let's turn our attention over to graduate school on your application. I am going to ask, let's see, who haven't I heard from in a little bit? University, let's do UNT Dallas. If I have a graduate degree, does that give me a leg up on my application?
I think in terms of evaluating applicants, we look for the gold. So if you have some positive elements to bring to your application, fantastic. If you haven't done a graduate program, it's a non-entity, right? It just depends on the individual. So if you, for example, have done a graduate degree, it will, you know, we're going to look at it. We look at your undergraduate GPA for our initial evaluation purposes, but again, we're going to see your transcripts and take a look at them. And by and large, most people kind of get it as they go into graduate programs, and they really put the pedal to the floor and do tremendously well in graduate programs. So if there's a chance that you have the Richter scale of grades in your undergraduate experience, perhaps in that way your graduate programs are gonna fare better for you. So certainly it does help you, but it doesn't necessarily put you up and above others. Very simply because we're evaluating you as an individual, not comparing you to others.
Okay, thank you for that. I think I would agree that that's the situation at the University of Houston Law Center as well, and I think for most of our colleagues. I have some questions regarding first generation law students and applying to programs, and any special programs and or special consideration. Thurgood Marshall, can you speak to that? Perhaps let's start with approximately how large of a population of first generation students do you have? Are there any special programs or support for them?
To be honest, the majority of our law students are first-time law students and their families. Some are even first-time college graduates themselves and their families. So we do not necessarily have any specific first-time programs. Really, everybody's kind of in the same boat due to our student population.
Okay. Dean Mensa, we were just talking about first generation law students. Do you have any data relative to first generation students at the University of Houston Law Center? And are there any special programs, mentoring, support, scholarship, anything for those students?
Right. So yes, we do have a vast majority of our students in this incoming class were first generation law students, about almost 80% of the class, which I think is significant and something that I always share with each incoming class so that they recognize that they're not the only one who maybe feels a little bit lost or doesn't know what they're doing. We're not bringing in a class where, a lot of students have had, someone in their family that's a lawyer that they have experience with. We do have a student organization that the students have put together for first generation. So that would be a great place to start. And then I would say generally, and this is something that's available to all students, not just first generation, would be taking advantage of the fact that you do have a student mentor as well as a faculty mentor when you enter law school. And you have student TAs in your first year courses. Those TAs will also offer tutoring sessions for the 1L classes. So I would say taking advantage of all of those resources, as well as just your student services office and career development office is going to be helpful just to put you in a position where you have someone you can ask questions to and find out the information that you don't know. Because sometimes the hardest part is like not knowing what you don't know. And so talking to those people can help you figure all of that out.
Okay. I got some random kind of questions here. Baylor, I'm going to go to you. Does the state you attend law school in dictate where you can practice?
It does not dictate, absolutely not. So once you graduate from law school, you will take a bar exam either for a particular state, or you'll take something called the Uniform Bar Exam. We here in Texas are what's called a UBE state as of fairly recently. And that means that I think we're at 37 or 38 states now that offer the UBE. And that means you can take a bar exam, and then different states can set different passage rates and different requirements to become licensed in that state. So that being said, you can go to law school somewhere and take the bar exam somewhere else or be licensed elsewhere. However, you will have a lot of networking opportunities in the region where your law school is located. A lot of the employers in the region where your law school is located will be familiar with your school, will interview on your campus. So I think I can say that it is easier to become employed and become an attorney in the region where you're located.
Okay, thank you. Another somewhat random, does your institution have an intensive 2-year JD program? If you do, guys, drop that in the chat. If not, I'm going to go to my next question. Okay. Okay, clinics. We haven't talked about clinics. And I probably think most of that information is available on our website. But let's see, SMU, tell us a little bit about the clinics that you offer at your institution.
So we have 11, and I can definitely drop the link in the chat so so we don't spend time going over all 11. But they range from anything related to tax law. We have one of our more common ones recently in the last couple of years has been our Innocence Initiative clinic. We have a domestic violence clinic. So if there's something that you're interested in, it probably falls within one of those. So I'll pull that and drop it in now.
Okay, great. I appreciate that. And for the other panelists, if you'd like to put the link to where they can find out information about your clinics, that would be awesome as well, so that we make the most of our remaining time. Okay, let's see. A couple other random Questions? Well, this is. I'll ask it, it was asked. How do I make my application stand out? That's a big one. Anybody want to take that one?
I will.
Okay, thank you.
Be yourself. You know, take your time and do a little bit of introspection. I think, you know, all of you have accomplished something in one way, shape, or form at this point. Whether you're a rising junior, you're a senior right now doing your thing. You're about to graduate from college, and that's a big deal. So don't get lost on that fact. All right. And as vanilla as you think your life is, if you just take a minute to look at it and really, you know, do some internal examination, you realize how awesome you are right now. Okay. 1, 2, if you're kind of stuck on the personal statement, one technique that's worked for people, it's just one of many, but you know, take your voice recorder on your phone in a moment of peace and clarity, press record, and ask yourself why you want to be a lawyer, and really dig deep. Don't just say, you know, hey, you know, I want to help people and stuff like, but what is the thing that struck a nerve? What is the thing that really got you to want to do this? Because it is a pretty impressive undertaking. Just the fact that you're here is a part of that whole thing. So you know, convey that in spoken word on a voice recorder, transcribe it to a Word document, and you'll see the gold in it. If you let it bake for a little bit, you'll see the gold in it. And that's where all the rest of it kind of emerges from. But your personal statement, don't underestimate your personal statement, I'd say, 1. And 2, most importantly, it's your interview. It's your opportunity to interview with us. So take full advantage of it. Please don't use quotes. Please don't use quotes. Speak your own voice, because your voice is in there somewhere. You just got to pull it out and take a moment to really understand yourself so you can do that.
Okay, thank you. That was very good. Thank you. I wish someone had said something like that to me when I was applying to law school. Wow, thank you so much for that. The next question centers around students with disabilities, support services that are available to them. I'm assuming that all of our offices, all of our schools have an office, an employee or employees that are dedicated to assist any students with documented disabilities. Am I correct in that? Okay. Alrighty, here's another question. University of Texas, take this. Can you practice in a different state with a Texas law license?
Absolutely. I think we covered this question already. You can take the bar in any state as long as you prepare for that state's bar, unless it's the UBE, as my colleague at Baylor Law mentioned.
Okay. Alrighty. I think that is all of the questions that I have. I want to just go to the chat real quickly to see if I can just pull out a couple. Oh, the splitter question. We never dealt with it directly. But I think we've danced around it. But I'm going to go to Texas A&M to address that whole splitter. So that's the notion of a high GPA, low LSAT, or vice versa. So can you speak to how or what else an individual can do if they are a splitter?
Probably at this particular point in time, if you're talking about GPAs and grades and wanting to improve there's not going to be very much movement between the time you submit your application and when you actually complete your courses and when you will be receiving admission decisions, scholarship decisions. And so you won't see significant movement because you have obviously less amount of time, fewer courses to actually improve that GPA, and it's hard to raise a GPA. So the GPA essentially is going to be locked in for you once you begin the application process with a little fluctuation. It's a lot easier to lose a GPA than it is to build one at this stage. With regards to your LSAT, that's the game changer in terms of assessing your true level of preparation, your ability, or GRE in some cases, in terms of coming back and taking a second bite or perhaps a third bite at that apple. Can I improve that number to bring the LSAT on par with an existing GPA or things of that nature? It's just that. the overwhelming majority of our students at Texas A&M are going to be quote unquote splitters. I don't see a significant critical mass of our students coming through that are scoring, 4.0s, 180s in regards to numerical indicators. And so I won't bore you with the details, but we all have access to services through LSAC that talks about index scores and talks about correlation studies in regards to combinations of LSATs and GPAs and how well those students perform as 1Ls at our particular institutions. So we do have a lot of statistical data and knowledge in regards to, can you do the work at our particular law school based upon grading curves and past performance of students coming into our class. So it's not just, Dean Mensa, I think you can do the work. Congratulations, you're admitted. There's a lot of statistical data over an extended period of time that helps us understand how prospective students will or could potentially perform at our particular law schools, given the resources that we have available to assist you academically. And we rely upon those. So I wouldn't be overly concerned if you're a splitter. What I tend to tell people is that if one of those numbers are at or above the median, certainly at the 75th percentile that we're reporting, then you stand a great shot if the other number is respectable. And by respectable, you want to be within that reported range as well, that 25th percentile or above. I think you have a fighting chance, so to speak, then.
Okay, thank you very much. Anybody want to add to that?
I just wanted to
Paula.
add to that. Sometimes with splitters, if it's very significant, it can be helpful for the applicant to include an addendum. Not always, maybe there isn't a reason why GPA is lower, but sometimes there is. And so when we see a particularly high LSAT and then a lower GPA, I wonder sometimes what happened. And I like it to be addressed if possible. And an addendum would be a great place to do that. Otherwise, I'm kind of guessing and wondering what was going on. Like, why did they do so well here, but not, so great over here? So.
Okay, makes sense. All righty. What I want to do at this point is, first of all, thank all of my colleagues for joining us today. I hope everybody has found this session to be very helpful. I know it takes a lot of your time, and I know the students appreciate you sharing the time with us today. But I have one last question for the students. So let me share my screen here. All righty, we're going to Menti.com again. And we're going to just see how you felt about this. Is this something we should keep doing? So at Mentimeter.com, excuse me, the code is listed there. Tell us how you feel about the information that you learned today. We're interested to know. I'll just give it a couple more, maybe another minute or so to let others who want to weigh in on this. We do definitely appreciate your feedback as we host these types of events. It's my hope that my colleagues will be willing to do this event again. Again, never will you have the opportunity in one place and one space and one time to hear from all these lovely representatives from the various Texas law schools. So again, I do thank them. And lastly, for our panelists, if you have not done so, or you feel the need to do so again, as we wrap up the session today, making sure that your websites are listed in the chat, your contact information, or someone in your office that students can reach out to, should they have further questions about your specific institution, if you can put that information in the chat. I know that Dean Mensa, who's recording this session, I believe will send out the link to this session, just in case folks want to hear it again. It'll be available to you. And again, we thank everybody for sharing your afternoon with us. And thanks again, panelists, for staying on a little longer than we had anticipated. We appreciate your time, and we'll see you all again soon.
Thank you. And yes, I will be sending the recording out probably on Monday.
Okay, awesome.
Thank you all. Take care.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye,
Thank you.
everyone.
Thank you
Bye.
all. Bye.